The Catholic Church has a new pope. India and Pakistan are bringing the world to the brink of nuclear World War III. And Europe's wannabe strongman tripped up on his way into office. We're going to look at all this and more on today's Trumpet World.
Leo the 14th is Cardinal Primus. He's American.
Well, it wasn't quite our response upon finding out the identity of the new pope, but it was certainly a pretty big surprise. Pope Leo the 14th, America's very first pope. So Andrew had an article on the website making sense of this somewhat. So Andrew, what do you make of Pope Leo the 14th?
I was definitely surprised, as were a lot of people. It's been kind of common wisdom for practically forever that the Pope is never an American. Just geopolitically, years ago, back when you had to travel by steamship to Europe, America was just too far away. And more recently, just being the world's superpower, a lot of the other cardinals didn't want a pope hailing from the United States. And so I was definitely one going into this thinking that, well, the last nationality it would be the United States. I'd even seen some reports about Prevost and kind of ignored them because it's from the United States. Although he is, as a number of commentators have pointed out, one of the least American of the American candidates. He's actually a dual citizen of America and Peru, raised in Chicago, but was appointed a bishop in Peru back in around 2014. And out of the past 20 years has only spent 2 years in the United States. The rest of the time being spent in Latin America or in Rome, where he was the prefect for the diastery of bishops. That's actually an oft overlooked power position in the Vatican. You're in charge of the office, in charge of making new bishops around the world, which is, if you wanted to subvertly campaign, a good position, because you're in contact with all the local offices everywhere. But the trumpet brief I wrote yesterday actually focused more on the name he chose. If I can brag a little bit, that's the only prediction I made right. I have email proof. I sent emails to most.
I received one of them. I can confirm. Yes, you did call Pope Leo the 14th.
I said he was going to be. The conclave was going to be decided on this Sunday, and it was wrong. I said it was going to be Pier Baptistu Pizzaballa, and was wrong. And it was going to be Leo 14th. So I'm batting a 33% right now in calling popes. But one of the reasons I was focused on Leo the 14th is I've written so much about Pope Francis's economic agenda. And a lot of people have accused Francis of being a communist or being a socialist and being an anti-Catholic. And in their defense, he did have some communist mentors in Argentina back in the day. But Francis, quite rightly, has justified himself, saying, no, he's like, I'm not teaching against Catholic social doctrine. All my economic policies, which may seem socialist to others, were actually laid down in an 1891 ecumenical by Pope Leo the 13th, titled On Labor and Capital. And so this part of the Francis agenda of uniting the world against free market capitalism and trying to make this third way economic system where private property is allowed but still supervised by Roman Catholic economic officials is something that Leo the 13th was really noted for. Pope Francis was aggressive in promoting that agenda. Uh, Prophetically, it made sense because Revelation 18 talks about this economic mart where when the Vatican eventually falls, the merchants of the earth weep bitterly, showing that there is definitely a strong economic aspect to the Vatican in the end time. And Pope Francis, even though he wasn't the last pope, was fulfilling those prophecies. And so we're expecting the next pope to fulfill those prophecies as well. And I thought it was like, well, if a pope was going to do that, but even more overtly than Francis, like he'd call himself something like Leo the 14th. And lo and behold, that's exactly what happened. Prevost has since admitted that he actually uh, called up his two brothers, who I think still live in Chicago, before he went into the conclave, saying that he's like, well, if I'm elected Pope, what do you think I should call myself? And they jointly decided that Leo the 14th makes the most sense. And pretty much most of the uh, analysis I've seen in the past 24 hours are saying that there's obviously were 12 Leos before Leo the 13th, including Leo the Third, who crowned Charlemagne. But since Leo the 13th was the most recent, most people are interpreting this decision to say that like Leo the 14th wants to be a new Leo the 13th who's going to be espousing Catholic social doctrine above and beyond the traditional free market that's dominated the United States for the past 2.5 centuries.
I think that's a great point. And I think the other legacy of Pope Leo the 13th that I think Provost is thinking about is his legacy as a unifier or someone trying to bring people in. I think one of his very first encyclicals, or I think it was his first encyclical, he talked about reaching out to Protestants. He said that no small share of our thoughts and our care is devoted to our endeavor to bring back to the fold, placed under the guardianship of Jesus Christ, the chief pastor of souls, sheep that have strayed. And you mentioned Revelation 17, Revelation 18 being a very direct prophecy of the Catholic Church having massive influence over the global economy. Isaiah 47 talks about this same church and having massive influence over or bringing in its Protestant daughters into the fold and persuading all of these groups that have left the Catholic Church to return back. So I think that's a very direct and specific tie-in from Leo the 14th to, or Leo the 13th to Leo the 14th. And I think having an American pope, having an English-speaking pope, is probably quite good for that. I think a lot, you look at what is put off at least a lot of English-speaking Protestants, and it is this kind of, ritualistic, Latin, hocus pocus, kind of that term comes from Protestants of observing the Catholic Mass. It seems very foreign and alien and different, and I could see a Leo the 14th, an American Pope, making it seem a lot more familiar. And you look at the way you have people like J.D. Vance, that's a convert to the Catholic Church. There's a lot of converts coming back into the Catholic Church at the moment. I think that's something even that's taken off over the last few months. So that would be interesting. I think another legacy along these lines is it was Leo the 13th that ended the culture camp with Otto von Bismarck and Bismarck's Germany and really helped restore relationships between the Catholic Church and Germany. And if you're a little bit creative on the translating, you could translate culture camp as the culture war. So, he's named himself after the Pope that ended the culture war. And I do think that is at least one of his objectives. Like, he would like to be somebody who unifies the Catholic Church and that ends some of the culture war within the Catholic Church, and somebody maybe that can play that larger role in society as well. I think he's been talked about as a kind of a continuity for Francis, and I think certainly you make a very strong case on the economic case that he is. I think, though, he's less, like, Pope Francis did seem to enjoy arguing with his opponents, and I think he will be a more palatable figure to both sides, and maybe kind of compromise where Pope Francis was strident. So unification, I think, will be a big key to what he wants to talk about.
Yeah, I'm sure we'll see much more of that even within just a couple weeks, um, I wrote an in brief even before the conclave, just pointing out the fact that in like 11 days from now, so less than 2 weeks, we've got the 1700th anniversary of the Council of Nicaea. This council, the Emperor Constantine called to um, unify the church against some of the divisions that had crept up, doctrinal divisions over a number of issues. One of the councils that's still held as binding by both the Catholic and the Eastern Orthodox Church, Pope Francis had agreed to go to Istanbul, or what used to be Constantinople, and meet with the Patriarch of Constantinople, the head of the Greek Orthodox Church, and celebrate the Council of Nicaea. Francis has died since then, so Patriarch Bartholomew has extended an invitation to whoever the new pope was, if he wanted to take it. And obviously, Pope Leo's been in office for less than 24 hours. He's been busy with many things. I don't see any reason why he would turn down that invitation. And so by all accounts, his first foreign visit, or one of his first foreign visits, might be to celebrate the Council of Nicaea with the Eastern Orthodox churches. Which, if his pontificate's supposed to be like a Leo the 13th style, bringing reunity with other Christian denominations, kicking that off on the 1700th anniversary of Nicaea would be a very symbolic way to do that.
We were driving back from the announcement of the conclave last night. I think one interesting point somebody made was that when Pope Leo appeared on the balcony, he wore a red cloak that traditionally popes wear when appearing for the first time, but was last worn by Pope Benedict the 16th when he came in, and then Francis intentionally shunned it, trying to get in a bit more humble appearance. And a lot of people interpret, okay, he put Benedict's cloak back on. That shows that he might want to give some more olive branches to the conservative wing of the Catholic Church. And I think what's really interesting is that for so many of his positions, with these culture war struggles that have been going on within the Catholic Church, like, say, giving community to divorcees or interfaith dialogue or women priests, etc., we don't really know his positions of that. He's made some suggestions that he's a bit more anti-homosexual than Francis was, based on comments that he made that have been highly publicized before Francis's pontificate. But with some of these other things that, say, you have two sides of the Catholic Church that are really much, you're either with us or against us, he's a complete unknown. That's the Catholic Church's way of finding somebody that can smooth in these old wounds without creating a schism, which is being openly talked about among many high-ranking clergy, which the fact that they even suggest that shows how serious things are getting.
I think another interesting heritage, I mean, Andrew, you talked about Leo the Third, the Pope that crowned Charlemagne and changed European history, and it really cemented the Catholic Church's role as the organization that chooses the Holy Roman Empire, that rides and controls that empire. And Pope Leo the 13th has also talked quite a bit about union between church and state and the Catholic's role in state. I mean, it's in On the Condition of Labor that you mentioned. I think, ironically, for the guy that the first American Pope named himself after, he has also denounced the quote, heresy of Americanism. Leo the 13th did. And this heresy of Americanism that he complained was rubbing off on the church was what he denounced, like individualism, the idea of separation of church and state. He doesn't believe in the idea of separation of church and state, Leo the 13th, clearly. And that's current confirmed Catholic teaching, though I guess Vatican II does introduce some ambiguities there. You can kind of cherry pick quotes from either side, I guess, on that. But some famous statements from Leo the 13th, where he said, "The Almighty has appointed the charge of the human race between two powers, the ecclesiastical and the civil, the one being set over divine, the other over human things." He also said, "The church and state are like soul and body. Both must be united in order to live and function rightly." So this is the big thing we were looking for from an oncoming pope. someone who is going to get involved in European politics and help bring a German strongman to power. And I think, we don't know exactly how this is going to play out. But just to go back to Trumpet Editor-in-Chief Gerald Flurry's article, A New Era Requires a New Pope. A new era in world history has begun. Jesus Christ prophesied of this period called the times of the Gentiles. We have to understand what this means. We're entering into the worst suffering in history. It will be extremely violent and thankfully short. It should not catch you off guard. The Bible gives many details about what to expect during this period. This includes many prophecies, specifically what role the Vatican will play. In some ways, Pope Francis has prepared the Catholic Church to fulfill some of these prophecies. However, I believe the changing time we live in will require a different pope. Pope Francis doesn't quite fit the picture. Prophecy tells us we should expect a strong leader to arise in Germany. Europe's most powerful country is facing many pressures right now. The war in Ukraine, significant conflicts in the Middle East, the possibility of more migrants flooding into Europe, and Germany is in a political mess. The nation needs much stronger leadership. Prophecy tells us it's about to get it. The Vatican will help bring that political leader on the scene, and that is when we'll really see the fireworks. Prophecy says the Vatican will become very powerful and institute radical changes. He talked about how the Catholic Church is going to unify Europe, bring in a binding force. He says most likely we'll see a church leader installed on the papal throne who really knows the German system and will help install the political leader who can really swing Europe around, a good, strong believer in the church's doctrine. Now, just from what I know of this Cardinal Provost, he doesn't quite seem like that guy to me. And I think we could definitely be surprised there. But even, like Mr. Flurry talked about, we're going into the times of the Gentiles. The times where God is raising up a European power to correct Britain and America for their sins. Personally, I don't think an American Pope is going to be that guy. And I wonder if what we're seeing is somebody who can bridge the gap. Somebody who can maybe bring the Catholic Church together and play perhaps some roles in unifying Europe and bringing in Protestants into the church, but then will bridge the gap to that much more strong Pope that Mr. Flurry is describing in A New Era Requires a New Pope.
Interesting questions. I saw a couple other commentators making the same point you did about how just ironic it is for the first American Pope to call himself Leo, just because the last one was so known for condemning church and state as not only a heresy, but a heresy, condemning the separation of church and state as not only a heresy, but a heresy called Americanism. But yeah, it is interesting because Revelation 17 and Revelation 18, they talk about a great false church, the leader of a false church who actually like guides a resurrection of the Holy Roman Empire. And that resurrection of the Holy Roman Empire has 10 nations. So you're looking for a pope that's guiding 10 nations in Europe. And those 10 nations in Europe are prophesied to invade and conquer the United States. And so when you're looking for this political figure and this religious figure to be leading 10 nations in Europe against the United States, having the religious figure be an American himself is definitely a unique wrinkle, and for that reason, I think I am thinking along the same lines as you are, is that Pope Leo is going to play a very significant role in bringing unity between Eastern Orthodox and Roman Catholics and continuing Francis's mission to unite the world against America's economic system. But there may actually be another pope who's actually rallying the Holy Roman Empire against America. We'll have to see how that goes forward, because those things can happen quickly. The last time the Holy Roman Empire was on the scene, it was Pope Pius XII, but he was elected like right on the eve of World War II. There was his predecessor Pius XI that kind of like prepared the way for him. So yeah, if you're looking for like a European pope to rally the Holy Roman Empire against the United States, like I said, if you're looking at like Pius XII as a precedent, that guy could come on the scene like right before hostilities break out. He doesn't necessarily have to be on the scene for a long time before those prophecies are fulfilled. And so we may well be seeing a Pope Leo really doing a lot of the groundwork to bring this mart of nations against America into fruition before that last guy shows up.
I think one interesting wrinkle about this with him being American is that if you go back decades to when Mr. Herbert W. Armstrong was speaking about when Europe was going to rise, etc., he maybe didn't necessarily point to the Vatican specifically about this, but he would talk about how America is eager to get this union going up, and then when it turns on America, it's going to shock everybody. It's going to be a complete surprise. And to see somebody who's American sitting in one of the offices is going to help bring that up, I can't help but wonder if this might even serve as a smokescreen for all of that. Like, Pope Francis, for his part, he's not European. And for somebody to continue on the legacy, the very fact that he's American, you could think, well, he's one of us. He wouldn't hurt us. Okay, maybe we disagree in a few things, but he can't be that dangerous. Like, one of the descriptions the Bible gives of the Catholic Church and the Vatican in Revelation 13 is that it has two horns like a lamb but speaks as a dragon. It looks very innocent. You don't necessarily see it as a threat just by looking at it, but you have to look at what comes out of its mouth. You have to look at its actions. And to have somebody that to many Americans may indeed look a bit like a lamb while he's building this system together could very well play an important part in this prophecy.
Yeah, you could always see Cardinal Parolin kind of in the background playing a similar role to the role that the man who eventually came Pope Pius XII did, where you've got an American Pope, and that may well give free rein to a very experienced Secretary of State to be the main mover and shaker on the European scene, but much less publicly. Well, we do have our free book, The Holy Roman Empire in Prophecy, that does have a whole lot more to say about what to expect from the future of the Catholic Church. Not necessarily every twist and turn in the story, but the Bible is very clear in where we're going. And as that book points out, very clear on the ultimate outcome, that all of this is leading very, very quickly to the establishment of the kingdom of God on earth. And that you see the Holy Roman Empire rising in Europe right now. And that's an empire that's going to cause a lot of suffering. But this is also all happening in context of God's plan for mankind and the restoration of his government on this earth. So you can look that up. We'll have a link to that in the show notes. We'll come back to you, Andrew, in just a minute. We'll come back to some stories from Europe in just a minute. I just wanted to now bring up the other kind of earth-shattering story from this week, and that is India and Pakistan sitting on the brink of nuclear war. And so to get the latest from this, we'll go to Jeremiah Jacques.
The big story for Asia is that this conflict between India and Pakistan just keeps on escalating, and it really does threaten to become something just terribly serious. So the tensions exploded there on Wednesday. That's when Indian armed forces struck 9 sites in Pakistan and in some disputed areas with missiles. And India said that those strikes were in response to a terrorist attack that happened last month when terrorists killed 27 people in Kashmir and injured many others. And these were mostly Indians who were killed and injured. So Indian authorities said that the 9 targets they hit on Wednesday were connected to the terrorists who were behind that attack. And India emphasized that it had very carefully avoided striking any Pakistani military facilities in this attack. But Pakistan's rulers, they adamantly deny that they had anything to do with the terrorist attack, and they were just outraged by these Indian strikes. And so they have been striking back in the days since then. We've heard reports of heavy artillery fire being exchanged across the India-Pakistan border. There have also been claims by Pakistan that they've shot down several Indian warplanes and at least 1 drone. And there are also claims now of India using drones to hit new targets inside of Pakistan, and reports as well of dozens of dead and injured on both sides of the border as a result of these various strikes and all the shelling. It has been difficult to confirm some of the reports, particularly about whether or not Pakistan really was able to shoot some Indian warplanes down. And that's not really surprising since misinformation campaigns are, very often part and parcel with conflicts like this. But even if we don't know all of the details, it is clear that this conflict is still escalating. And that's deeply alarming because India and Pakistan both have nuclear weapons. That makes this conflict different from other conflicts that are underway right now, such as Russia's invasion of Ukraine or Hamas versus Israel. In the other conflicts underway right now, only one of the two warring parties is nuclear armed, or neither of them in the case of certain African conflicts that are happening right now. So in other conflicts, the risk of nuclear weapons being used is very low. But with India and Pakistan, they both have well over 100 of these unfathomably destructive nuclear weapons. And if tensions keep on escalating, the worry is that what is currently a conventional conflict could explode into an actual nuclear war. So we can't yet say whether these current tensions will cool down or whether they'll keep on escalating. But the tragic truth is that mankind is going to soon suffer a nuclear war. We know that because in Matthew 24, verses 21 through 22, Jesus Christ is recorded saying that just before he returns, there will be greater anguish than at any time since the world began. That's the way the New Living Translation renders it. And then it says, unless that time of calamity is shortened, not a single person will survive. End quote. So really, this could only be describing a nuclear war with enough detonations to cause global nuclear winter. And the scriptures show that this conflict will soon erupt. But it is not all bad news. The scriptures also show that before mankind can totally wipe himself out, the war will be interrupted and God will bring in an age of peace to the world. Nation shall not lift up sword against nation, neither shall they learn war anymore. That's what the prophet Isaiah had to say about this future time of peace. And it sounds like just such a beautiful departure from everything that we see happening around the world right now today, not just in India and Pakistan, but in several other conflict zones and really everywhere. So there are some dark times ahead, really as dark as anything that you could imagine. But just on the other side of that, there will finally be peace. And if you'd like to understand that passage in Matthew and numerous other Bible passages that relate to this, I hope you'll order a copy of Trumpet Editor-in-Chief Gerald Flurry's booklet called Nuclear Armageddon is at the Door.
Well, thank you very much for that, Jeremiah. So some comfort in that this isn't going to lead to nuclear World War III, but it's a sobering story that should wake us up to how dangerous this world is. And Pakistan is shocked to find that there are terrorists that are striking India within Pakistan when they have deliberately and clearly harbored terrorists for a great length of time. It's no coincidence that Osama bin Laden was camping out there in Pakistan. So you've got a country that does harbor terrorists and that has nuclear weapons, and that's something that could play a very direct role in what we're expecting even in World War III. So a dangerous and sobering news story. Any other updates to bring us from Asia?
Yes, just a couple of shorter stories here. First up, one from China. This is about China's new arsenal of guided hypersonic missiles. U.S. Secretary of Defense Pete Hegseth spoke about these on Saturday, and he said that these missiles are powerful enough to, quote, take out 10 U.S. aircraft carriers in the first 20 minutes during a conflict with America. So that's the assessment of the U.S. Secretary of Defense, and it shows just how powerful China has become in recent years. And it shows that a war with China would be just tremendously devastating. So a very sobering assessment there. And then one final story here about Japan. The Japanese see China developing those missiles and doing so many other things to build up China's military power to just stunning levels. And the Japanese are very fearful that all of that might could be turned against Japan. And so they want Japan to be fully free to prepare for whatever may be coming. And so there was a big rally in Tokyo a few days ago, and tens of thousands of Japanese people came out to march and to demand that the government scrap the pacifist clause from their constitution. That clause was written by America and the other allied powers after World War II, after Japan lost, at the end of that war. And it was supposed to really ban Japan from being able to make war anymore and just keep it from really even having the means to wage aggressive wars of the kind that it had been waging for so many years before that. But Japan, of course, has been quietly ignoring all of that for many years. It's been quietly spending hundreds of billions of dollars to build up one of the world's most lethal militaries. But this rally on Saturday shows that for many Japanese citizens, all of these quiet moves are still not enough. They want Japan to be a fully normalized military power. They want the Constitution to be officially changed so that they can be free to rearm in any way they want to, and so that China and other aggressors know that Japan is armed to the teeth. So it shows that Japan is very much back on the warpath, and whether we soon see a constitutional revision or not, the Japanese will continue to build up their firepower, and it all points to some dark times on the horizon.
Thank you very much for that, Jeremiah. Before we move on too much from European events, I also wanted to give a quick update on the drama in Germany. For the first time in post-war history, a chancellor failed to secure the necessary support in the first round of voting. Friedrich Merz, like we talked about this on last show. George, you could play the clip. This is what we said last week. They're all set to take office on May 6th. Now, the Bundestag, the German parliament, still has to vote them in. There's a small chance that you might get some rebels, a handful of rebels, try to block it from both parties, kind of going rogue. That's pretty unlikely, though, and we're overwhelmingly most likely to see Friedrich Merz take office on May 6th, and keep watching German politics for that strongman to rise. That obscure technical possibility actually ended up happening. He had some of his own party or some of his coalition party that had basically pledged their support turn against him in the first round of voting. We had several hours of kind of chaos and uncertainty coming from Germany before finally they decided they were going to rush ahead with another vote. It had been, I think, initially scheduled. They were talking about Friday, but they got it in the same day. And that time he got the necessary votes and moved forwards. And he's taken office as Chancellor of Germany. He's been traveling to France. He's been traveling to Poland. He's declared a state of emergency on migration so that he can deal with migrants. He's trying to move on with his chancellorship. But that drama, I think, has left a wound. Whether that wound recovers, whether it's curable or not, remains to be seen. But he still enters office wounded. This was the man that everyone was looking for to give strong leadership to Germany. And instead, he couldn't even get his own coalition to support him as chancellor. If he can't get that vote, how is he going to get anything controversial through the German parliament? How is he going to be able to exercise any kind of decisive leadership? It's a big question. Ahead of the vote, the Telegraph had an article, Friedrich Merz, the man Europe has been waiting for. Afterwards, they had an article, Friedrich Merz was supposed to lead Europe, now he's fallen flat on his face, where they said Germany's Mr. Tough has become Mr. Trousers round his ankles. Politico, Merz has weakened from day one. Europe will pay the price. And they quoted someone from the head office or the Berlin office of the European Council of Foreign Relations, saying the whole of Europe looked to Berlin today in the hope that Germany would reassert itself as an anchor of stability and a pro-European powerhouse. That hope has been dashed with consequences way beyond our borders. Frankfurter Allgemeine Zeitung, this setback will hurt Merz for a long time to come. He's got local elections in just a year. People saying already, well, is the coalition going to stand the course? Are we going to see a whole lot of pressure come on him in those local elections? How can this man lead Europe if he can't even lead his own coalition? And this ties into this story that we've been talking about for months. Well, for years, since the very earliest issues of the Trumpet magazine. Watch German politics and watch for this instability to lead to the rise of a strongman. Mr. Flores talks so often about a strongman coming into power, through flatteries, through deceit, through not the normal standard election process, and a coalition opening the door for that to happen, and an unstable coalition even. That's what we've seen. I mean, this is a montage of Key of David clips where Mr. Fleury has talked about this just a few times over the years.
He's not going to come in by, let's say, a democratic process. He's going to come in and use flatteries and sort of tweak the democratic process. It says here something like that, and perhaps take advantage of a weak coalition. But he's going to come in by flatteries. So God sees him, well, not the same way the people see him, but he actually gains that power, hijacks that European superpower by flatteries. He apparently puts together some kind of a small coalition, and that's how he moves into power. I mean, he is unusually adept at flattery. You have to be very intelligent to be able to deceive people in high places with flattery. And he does it magnificently. He was never voted into the office, but he came in, got control of all that power through deceit and flatteries. Now remember, this is an end-time book, and this is an end-time prophecy. It's going to happen again in this end time. A man is going to come, and through deceit and flatteries is going to get control of the Holy Roman Empire and its 10 toes, or 10 kings, and not by voting. Even though that is their system today, it is not going to, he's going to come in another way.
So keep watching this story. We're expecting the rise of a strong German leader in Europe, as well as the rise of a strong pope. And these two will work together to create a new European superstate. And so, watch this uncertainty. Watch what happens with Merz. Watch for that to open the door for the rise of a strong leader. And on that subject of the rise of a strong leader, YouGov had a poll this week where 59% of German adults said they're concerned that a third world war is imminent. 64%, so nearly 2/3 of those that they surveyed, said they believed that German democracy is in danger. They weren't sure whether the threat came from the left or the right, but they were sure that it was dangerous. 60% said they saw similarities between the current political climate and the 1930s and 1940s. I mean, they weren't the only ones. Driving into work this week, I heard Nicholas Frank on the radio. If you've been following the trumpet for a long time, you might be familiar with Nicholas Frank. He is the son of Hitler's personal lawyer, who then went on to govern Poland. He was a mass murderer, and he was sentenced to death at the Nuremberg trials. And Nicholas Frank has written eloquently, coming to terms with the fact that his father is an evil man. And what does that mean for him? What does this history mean for Germany? And he was on the BBC back in, I think, 2015 or so, 2016, and he had a powerful warning saying, don't trust us. What happened in World War II could happen again. And watch for the rise of a Nazi spirit. Or he was saying, I can see the rise of a Nazi spirit in Germany already. We're fed up with democracy. And after that, we invited him over to Edstone. He came out for the day. We recorded a bunch of programs with him. He was really interesting to talk to. Had a couple of meals with him. And so, I perked up hearing him on the radio. And they were interviewing him for VE Day. They were trying to have, I think, a more casual of a chat. But he had a serious warning that he wanted to get across. And so they had him, and they had somebody whose ancestors, whose grandparents and family were killed by Nicholas Frank's father. They were talking about the relationship between the two men. They asked him about that. Here's how Nicholas Frank answered that question.
Nicholas, we heard Philippe talk movingly about what he's gained from getting to know you. Have you gained something from getting to know him?
We had a wonderful first meeting. I showed him my picture of my father, which I'm bearing with me. In the meantime, I can tell you my father isn't dead. When I look at his dead face, I see him nearly smiling. Because in the end, as you look at Germany today, he is still alive and very powerful.
In what way is he still alive and powerful?
As you know, I studied a lot of my life the life of my father. I had a lot of documents. And so I always was keen. How is it when a democracy came to its end? And this I am smelling the last years. I would say German people are fed up with democracy, like in the end of the Weimar Republic. And they are looking for a new Führer, for a new leader.
He was determined to shoehorn that answer in, and I'm glad he did. That's an important warning to Germany. And sadly, the BBC kind of started talking about Donald Trump being the dictator after that. But he sees conditions in Germany that it's ripe for the rise of this kind of a strong leader. And we can put a link in the show notes. Never Trust the Germans was the title of a write-up that we gave of some of those interviews in our time with him several years ago. So, great to see someone from Germany getting this warning out. And a final European story I'll just cover quickly comes from Romania. They've had a pretty dramatic week. Well, they've had a pretty dramatic 6 months or so. You might remember back in December, they held a presidential election. The far-right candidate won. The Romanian government said, wrong answer, try again. The president basically annulled that election. They blamed Russian interference. There was some credible evidence of that. Turned out that may well have been overstated, though. And they arrested the guy. They've charged him with crime. They prevented him from running again. And they reran those elections. And the first round of those elections were held over the weekend. And once again, a different far-right leader won those elections. So their attempt at overriding the will of the people backfired, and the people are determined to have a far-right leader. And this is the big danger and dilemma of what is happening in Europe. You clamp down on the will of the people, well, that's not democratic, and that's a path to strongman leadership. But in many of these countries, the people want a far-right leader. That's worrying too. Since then, the prime minister has resigned. We'll see what happens with the second round of their vote. But a very difficult situation in Romania, and really democracy under threat in Europe. And again, the Holy Roman Empire in Prophecy, a great book to understand what's happening, both with the Catholic Church, but also the trend for secular history, secular Europe. And, it's not going to stay secular much longer. And the rise of the United States of Europe, this 10-nation Holy Roman Empire that we're anticipating. And you can get that on our website, thetrumpet.com. We'll also go back now to the United States as well, which we started off by talking about the American Pope. But we'll go back to Andrew and hear about what else has been happening in the United States this week.
Yeah, there's quite a few other stories in the United States and other English-speaking nations around the world this week. One of the big ones, kind of tangentially related to the new Pope election, is Pope Leo XIV is pretty well known when he was Cardinal Prevost for tweeting criticisms of the Trump administration against Donald Trump and J.D. Vance, most specifically about their stance on immigration. But the new Pope's not the only critic of President Trump's immigration policy. We're also almost getting to like constitutional crisis style levels where the president's trying to enforce the American immigration laws and being attacked at every turn by liberal judges who do not want illegal immigrants deported. There are actually 2 more judges this week that blocked the Trump's use of the Alien Enemies Act, saying that he cannot use that to deport drug cartel agents and gang members from the United States because it violates people's right to due process. This obviously ignores the fact that due process is a constitutional right for American citizens. Non-Americans do not have due process rights while in the United States. And the fact that the Supreme Court has already ruled in on this, saying that as long as the president gives potential deportees the time to appeal their deportation. Basically, if they are a citizen and they think they're wrongfully being deported, to appeal that they can go ahead with this. That Supreme Court decision has not seemed to have allowed President Trump to continue his policy of getting rid of illegal immigrants in America, with a number of other judges doing everything they can using lawfare to make sure that those immigrants stay here in the United States. Our executive director, Mr. Stephen Flurry, had a trumpet brief a few weeks ago titled "A Nation of 700 Presidents," just making the point of how ludicrous it is to have like every district judge in America able to basically veto a presidential action based on some obscure legal point, regardless of what the Supreme Court says. And so that is another story that is continuing to take a bigger and bigger role in American politics, where you've got basically corrupt judges or leftist judges who are still trying to push forward a leftist agenda now that the leftists have lost control of the presidency and Congress. And
this is, I think Britain shows America what you have in store if Donald Trump loses this fight.
Yeah, that's actually a really good point here, just seeing this, how much that like Congress has passed immigration laws. The Biden administration allowed people to openly flout those laws, allowed 9 million illegals into the country. President Trump and the Republican Party the Republican Party platform has promised to carry out the biggest deportation campaign in U.S. history. Trump made the standpoint. He's like, if I have to give all 9 million illegal immigrants who came to America the same level of due process as I have to give a United States citizen, it will take me 200 years to deport all of them.
And that's exactly what we face here, because it takes forever. Like each deportee has to wait to see a judge, and that takes forever. And then the judges over here in the UK just find absurd reasons to have people stick around. Like, oh, their son doesn't like chicken nuggets, and that's a staple food in Albania, therefore they can't be deported. Like, that was literally a court judge's ruling. And governments, like elected governments, backed by a strong majority of the people, have wanted to deport people and had courts stop them. Now, I think Parliament is sovereign. Like those courts could do more if they had the guts, if they had the courage to stand up and do this and fight a lot of public opinion and make some big changes, and they'd have to probably pull Britain out of the European Convention on Human Rights, and they don't have the guts. And
right,
yeah, I mean that Donald Trump has we've criticized him on things like compromising with evil in the Middle East and things like that. He has been exceptional as a Western leader on courage to stand up for this kind of thing. So he's still fighting. We'll have to see how this ends, but I mean, I have nothing but admiration for his courage in fighting this fight, because we haven't had a British politician that has been able to win this war.
Yeah, and prophetically, it is interesting how this is shaping up, because we've made a major point for many years about Isaiah 1 and verse 7, about your cities being overthrown by strangers, your city being burned down by strangers. The Revised Standard Version even translates that word strangers as aliens, like your countries are being overthrown by aliens coming into this. And during the Obama and Biden administrations, it was really easy to see those prophecies being fulfilled as you had more and more race riots, more and more migrant crisis. Then Donald Trump came along, and within 100 days has basically sealed the border. We went from having 180,000 border crossings a month to having maybe 12,000 border crossings a month. And they're working to get that even lower. So, but just because he's sealed the border, he still hasn't gotten rid of like the 9 million or so people that were let in under the previous administrations. 10% of the U.S. population or something like that is illegal immigrants. Is just sitting there as a potential curse in future race riots if America doesn't repent, turn back to God, and have God help lift this national security threat.
Well, thanks for that, Andrew. Any other stories you wanted to bring us quickly from that region?
Yeah, quick rundown. The joke here in America today is that Donald Trump's tariffs are working better than anyone ever expected because even the Pope is made in America now. Uh, uh, they're also doing fairly well at bringing a number of nations to the negotiating table to negotiate better trade deals, including we've pretty much got the details hammered out for a trade deal with the United Kingdom. A lot of the media I've read on it saying this is a pretty big victory for both Donald Trump and Prime Minister Keir Starmer. Uh, England, they still have to pay the baseline 10% tariff on foreign goods that everybody pays, but they've pretty much dropped any other retaliatory tariffs above and beyond that. So definitely a big change from the Obama administration where they said that the UK is going to go back to the back of the queue for negotiating trade deals if they leave the European Union. And then Trump came in and maybe because of that statement, put the UK right at the front of the queue as his first major trade deal to hammer out before he starts going to the other nations.
Well, thank you for that, Andrew. Finally, we'll turn to Mihailo to get an update from what's been going on in the Middle East.
Yes, so a lot of activity going on centering around Yemen and the Houthi terror rebel group there, that Iranian proxy that's been disrupting shipping in the Red Sea. Weekly, they've been sending projectiles towards Israel. Most of them get shot down, but on Sunday, a missile landed in the vicinity of Tel Aviv's Ben Gurion Airport, the only functioning international airport in the country, not intercepted by Israel's missile defense system due to supposed technical errors. This is the first time such a major asset has been hit like this. Israel retaliated the next couple of days by attacking the Houthis' only international airport in Yemen, other important infrastructure there in Yemen. And in that context, on Tuesday, President Donald Trump in the White House announced this.
We had some very good news last night. The Houthis have announced that they are not, or they've announced to us at least, that they don't want to fight anymore. They just don't want to fight. And we will honor that. And we will stop the bombings.
Well, believe it or not, the Houthis actually have not been targeting merchant shipping, civilian shipping in the Red Sea since November. Most of their attacks in the Red Sea since then have been against U.S. warships and warships from other countries trying to protect that area. So what exactly is the U.S. getting out of this then, if the Houthis already haven't been doing this? Well, this is what sources speaking to CNN said, quote, Trump's announcement on Tuesday came after a flurry of diplomatic activity in recent days between the U.S., Oman, and the Houthis. The understanding between the U.S. and the Houthis not to attack each other is aimed at building momentum for nuclear deal talks with Iran. End quote. It's the same trend I've been talking about week after week here on this program. The U.S. is having nuclear negotiations in Oman with Iran to get a nuclear program. Iran controls the Houthis. Looks like at this point one of the big problems in the deal is that the U.S. is attacking this proxy group. Now they're throwing up their hands saying, no, we're not going to fight you anymore. If you don't hit us, we won't hit you. Some big red flags about this. The Houthis themselves on social media had said, we're still going to be fighting Israel. We're still going to be helping to fight with Hamas. And they have been this whole time, and the U.S. hasn't been shooting down these projectiles. And the President of the United States now says, we're going to sit this battle out right now. This is your fight, Israel. You're on your own. What does this say to every other jihadist group out there? What does it say, not just to the Houthis, but to Iran, to Hezbollah, to Hamas, to the terrorists in control of Syria right now? Basically saying that if you go after the Jews and you just leave our people alone, you leave our concerns alone, we don't care. That's their fight. We want out of this. I think it's interesting also that this ceasefire with the Houthis was negotiated with Steve Witkoff, the same man we've talked about with the deal with Iran, with the deal with Hamas from months ago, the ceasefire deal that forced Israel to back down and let Hamas live. When that ceasefire happened,
There'd be a lot of people listening to what you're saying. Okay, America's saying, Israel, you're on your own. that would say, well, yeah, this is what Donald Trump was elected to do. Fight your own battles. Israel, if you want to fight your own battles, we're not going to get in your way, but why should we fight those for you? I mean, this is a fundamental tenet that we're seeing all around the world. So, I mean, what is the danger of America saying, Israel, look after yourself?
Well, aside from the fact that there are American interests and there's a significant American expat population living in Israel, and the Houthis, for their part, they still have their weapons arsenal. They're still causing problems in the Red Sea area. The shippers probably aren't going to be coming back through there anytime soon. America is a target in as much as Israel is a target in these cases. So through the past few years, we have seen them definitely coalesce with each other, helping each other out. Iran and its groups, China, Russia, Cuba. America's always been the big prize. And to them, America has been the biggest opponent for this for decades, in them not pushing even further, not causing more global instability, in them not basically, to put it bluntly, conquering more of the world. And you're basically going to see world freedom as a result under attack, and you're going to be seeing just free societies, not just in the Middle East, but it's going to hit closer to home, eventually be pushed more and more to the point where they're not able to defend themselves at all.
So a lot of these people Israel is fighting are people that hate America, but Israel is closer, easier to get to, therefore the first target. So what you're saying is, if America helps Israel fight them, the two of them are much stronger together, and America has an ally in the fight. If America sits it out, those same people, once they're strong enough, they will be turning against the United States, or well, they've already turned, but they will be more capable in their fight against the United States, and America will be engaging in that fight without the advantages of having a Middle Eastern ally at its side.
Yes. Going back to what I was talking about before with the ceasefire deal, Mr. Gerald Fleury, our editor-in-chief, when the Gaza ceasefire deal happened, he published an article pretty soon after that, and I'll read from that now, quote, "This deal has exposed Mr. Trump's flaws in a way that none of us want to see. Something is dreadfully wrong here. What Mr. Trump has done here is going to plague him for the rest of his tenure in office. Just watch and see if it doesn't happen that way, unless he dramatically changes course," end quote. Now that was back when the Gaza ceasefire deal happened. This, you could almost say, it hasn't gotten as much attention from the media, but it's almost an even bigger step in that same direction. It is not a changed course. It is doubling down. And if people would like to learn more about that, you could read Mr. Fleury's article. We put it in the show notes. President Trump betrayed Israel.
So the potential for a major realignment within the Middle East. Well, I think the one other big story from the Middle East is actually as much a story about the UK as it is what's going on over there. And that was some dramatic arrests over the weekend of Iranian operatives in the UK. From what has filtered out, it looks like a major terrorist attack was planned on the Israeli embassy, and Iranian agents were working on that. They were swept up before they could launch that attack. But it's a powerful reminder of this pushy nature with Iran, and even what we were talking about how Israel's enemies are not just Israel's enemies. I mean, they would have been targeting Israel, but this would have been a major terrorist attack in the UK. So keep watching for those kind of events. Iran is pushing, and Iran is engaging in these kind of violent attacks around the world. And it, again, also shows, I think, the folly of negotiating with Iran. This is not a country that really desires peace. They're planning terrorist attacks and embassy bombings, all the while they're sitting around the negotiating table. So not an honest broker there. And that same article Mihailo mentioned, President Trump betrayed Israel, has more on that. Well, thank you so much for joining us this week. It really has been an epic news week. So much going on. Hopefully we've hit at least most of the high points. Like we mentioned when talking about Europe, Holy Roman Empire in Prophecy is a great booklet to go to understand what to expect from the Catholic Church, how they're going to develop over the weeks and months ahead. You can get that on our website, thetrumpet.com, in the literature section. Just click up there, change that view from showcase to all, and you can order your own free print copy. We'll put a link in the show notes as well. Thank you very much to Victor Granados and George Haddad for engineering and production. Thank you for watching. You can get in touch with the show at trumpetworld@thetrumpet.com. We'll be back next week, and until then, keep watching your world.